Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Anna Marie Opgenorth. I'm the Executive Director of Historic Milwaukee. And before we get started, I'd like to thank our tremendous sponsor. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, BMO Harris Bank. Thank you to the Pabst Theater Foundation, especially Gary Witt and Andy Nelson and their whole team. They worked really hard on this for the past 2 months, and without them, this would not be a reality. Thank you also to the Repertory Theater for donating tonight's set, to Reinhardt Law, Zilber, Urban Milwaukee, Milwaukee.com, the brilliant guys at Honeycomb Productions who are recording tonight's talk, to our amazing Milwaukee bartender, Evan Barnes, who is so much in that. Yeah. And Evan also contributed his ideas to those that were posted online, so it was great to work with him over the past 2 months as well. Thank you to Brian's Cocktail Lounge for donating the tools of his trade, and thank you to our wonderful Altera barista, Joshua Wisman, right? Wisman, thank you. And I'd also like to give a shout out to this wonderful blog called Milwaukeeer Than Thou, which is a really honest aggregate of personal visual experiences of Milwaukee that come together to tell one narrative or one story of our city. And that's really what Historic Milwaukee has been doing for the past 30 years. We're telling the history of Milwaukee in order to increase commitment to our historic architecture and the preservation of our unique built environment. And we do that by telling the story through neighborhood walking tours. We give hundreds of those throughout the year to thousands of elementary students who learn the founding of Milwaukee through our student tour program, through our annual Spaces and Traces neighborhood open house event, where individuals open their personal homes to share the history of their house and the history of their neighborhood, through our panel discussions, which explore contemporary issues in the built environment, and of course through Doors Open Milwaukee, where last year over 15,000 people came to downtown over one weekend. And the sole purpose of coming downtown was so that they could learn about their city through the buildings and through our built environment and hear the stories of the people that make those buildings live. And so what we're trying to do with those people is connect them to Milwaukee's history, to Milwaukee's story in a way that incites them to imagine how that story will unfold from today. And that's really what Envisioning the Seen is about. It's about imagining how we want our story to be told 50 or 100 years from now. So it's not just about a list of action items that we want to achieve today. It's about imagining the big picture. What do we want our heritage to be as individuals today? It's about trying a new way of publicly dialoguing about these ideas. It's about changing the people between whom this conversation typically happens in hopes of expanding our own personal, individual scopes of awareness. And if you think about it, Milwaukee is really just 500,000 highly personal individual experiences that come together in one space. And so in order to improve our shared culture of decision-making, change our collective habits that might not be getting us to where we want to go in the future, it means that some individual, somebody, has to start with an interior shift in the way that they react to or approach the world. And so in my opinion, the most powerful human tool for initiating those internal leaps of awareness or shifts, which when you have a critical mass of them create a cultural renaissance, that tool is really art. And art has a unique ability to almost trick us into seeing something from an outside perspective in a different light and in a deeper way. And that's why we chose to have the Envisioning the Seen discussion in this half-theatrical set here, to bring the people that are part of the discussion into a more personal space, where normally they wouldn't have these types of public discussions. And that's why I'd also like to invite my good friend Nigel Wade out to do a spoken word piece about his Milwaukee experience called New York Didn't Make Me. And so I'd like to welcome Nigel Wade to the stage.
York City. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Not true. Because see, New York didn't make me. I was created in Brewtown, manufactured by powerhouses. I am the byproduct of Brownsville love, christened with ripened watermelon from Mississippi. I looked at myself as a tree planted by Great Lakes. My roots run deep in Milwaukee. Christian named Wade, at night, surname Miller. High life in the winter, cautious during the summer. It's when the crazies come out. In a city where we built a shiny new baseball stadium for a garbage-ass baseball team whose season is pretty much over after the All-Star game. White flight Wrangler jeans held up by a Rust Belt, held up at gunpoint, hold up, trickle-down economics, but the dry bones of A&O Smith, Tower Automotive, and Master Lock have the inner city looking like an elephant graveyard. These bones crack harder in these times. It's tougher in these times. Hearing them crackle, chuckle over we that suffer. We get fucked. We don't give a fuck. Just keep telling us you'll bring jobs into the city and then stop them short of the city line. Build a highway through Brownsville so you can see the poverty line. Now that's progress. So I said, fuck it, and left to New York, but New York didn't make me. If New York made me anything, it's aware of my accent. It is not sexy. It is not colorful. It does not pop, twang, or make you think of the Caribbean. It does not represent any place hot, warm, or even tolerable. It rolls over the lips of Milwaukee's best. It tastes like piss. Tastes like Miller being bought out by Coors. So now you have the Rocky Mountain. So now you have the Rocky Mountain mixed with the Milwaukee River running green, and not just on St. Patty's Day. We have a Polish, German community with just the essence of the Irish, always fighting and drinking. On North Avenue, that offense is jailable. On National Avenue, that offense is jailable. On Water Street, that offense is tolerable. And the state flag reads forward, which is laughable. It should read bulldozed. The East Side condos getting built higher and higher, just underneath the ghettos, casting an unforgettable shadow, still reaching, too present to be thought of, too present to be forgotten. But insist we move out the lower class. Tell them to stop living off the government and get jobs. And since there's no jobs in the ghetto, you're telling them to get lost. Keep promising to bring in more manufacturing jobs and put them in rural areas. Then cut off the bus line at 124th Street to the west, Brown Deer Road to the north. Stay tuned, more cuts to follow. This was very noticeable in my speech when I reached New York. But New York didn't make me. If New York made me anything, it's paranoid. Millions of people living on top of millions of people, and no one will make eye contact. Afraid you'll ask them for something they ain't got while they act like they got it, like money, like compassion, like the dreams they had when they got out there, only to be rudely awakened by the reality of what is marketing and promoting, online dating, nothing more than a teleconference sales pitch. Tell me, why should I take time out of my career to spend it with you? It better be worth it. Better not find you in Chinatown for cheaper time spent laughing with this hipster in the East Village. about how these imaginary fences divide them from they, we from us. An issue of trust I am all too familiar with. Milwaukeeans conceal and carry humanity in their back pocket and then blame it on the economy. The economy is why this hipster is telling me my PBR tall boy will cost $5. I told him there's a place in Brewtown I can get those joints for $2.50. And that's with tip. And here's a tip. If you ever think of leaving, remember this. New York didn't make me. If anything, it made me a hypocrite. A dead man walking, heavy breathing. On the evening before I was leaving, the most sincere thing anyone said to me was, I hope to never see you in Milwaukee again. The truth sucks. Quicksands seem to form violently in cities like these, needing nourishment, feeding off those who feel they have no voice and are stuck here. But when I came back, I couldn't tell not one story to my friends about my apartment, my job, the taxis, the subways, the shows, the museums, the poetry without ending it with still. It didn't feel like home. So what's the point of leaving? If home is where the heart is, why be a zombie? Everyone's falling in love with werewolves and vampires nowadays. Budget cuts while trying to build empires nowadays. Keep promising to bring more jobs, more people, but have no plan on how to get people who live here to stay put. So what's the point of being homesick now when I left because I was sick of home? It's because home is where the heart is. Maybe I left mine here on purpose as a reminder that the only place to find Milwaukee, home, is in Milwaukee.
Thank you so much, Nigel. That was amazing. So I would like to, another round of applause. That's great. And so quickly, some housekeeping. Please, throughout the talk, text SEEN and your question to the number 22333, or you can also tweet to @poll_SEEN. And then also, if you would like to, within your programs, please write in your Milwaukee idea, and we'll post everybody's ideas online throughout the week this week. And now I'd just like to express my just floored gratitude to the participants of tonight's talk. And so with this child, yes, thank you. And I'd like to introduce our moderators tonight. Kyle Cherrick, host of Wisconsin Foodie, and Adam Carr, Milwaukee's storyteller. And they will, yes. And they'll introduce the discussion, and let's begin the talk.
Okay, so can you all hear me? I want to thank Nigel first for making it really, really hard for us. And now for an hour of conversation. All right.
So, and neither of us are built like him, by the way.
So the idea for this is to be a very free-flowing conversation. So there will be interruptions, there will be interjections, so hopefully some contusions, but no concussions. This will be full contact. I will say, Kyle and I kind of talked about this. If you hear anybody kind of receding into talking points, into kind of things they've said before 1,000 times, you can start booing. That's totally fine with us. If someone feels the need for the warmth of the womb of their own talking points,
but if you've
please
just
boo,
had a bad
'cause you paid.
day, this is not the place.
Absolutely. That's true. Okay, and we're not going to introduce anybody. That's been online. It's also in your program, so if you need some context for who's sitting up here, that is available to you.
Right, and this group, we've met a couple of times before for, I guess, what would be termed soft dress rehearsals. And the very first time we all met, this concept of the Milwaukee Malaise, which was an article or a series of articles that were in the Milwaukee Journal, was thrown out. And that was a bit of a springboard for discourse for everybody. But we also found that concept bringing us down. Interestingly enough, there were some people that absolutely believed that we had that, and there were some that were adamant that we didn't. And the ones that didn't were really fascinating, I think. We walked away going, wow, I wouldn't have guessed that. Mm-hmm. In any event, we all were charged by Historic Milwaukee to put forth a big idea, which you guys perhaps have gone to see online. That's the substance and the sussing and the meat of what is going to be discussed tonight in a very free-flowing manner. And the exciting thing, I think, for all of us is that what you've got is placemakers and stakeholders here, all in our own ways. And I don't think a lot of us would have cross-pollinated with the exception of this having come together, which is really very exciting. So as we move around this monopoly board called Milwaukee in our lives, we were forced to discuss and bump into each other here. Now, Adam has a big idea that I didn't entirely agree with, so we're just going to start there.
All right. So my idea is that I think Milwaukee oftentimes has an inferiority complex. And I think that we need to shift to having an underdog mindset. Inferiority complex is we have scarcity, and we're navigating scarcity together, and we're kind of apologetic about it. We feel as if we need to explain who we are and why we deserve attention and all of that. And an underdog mindset is just, fuck you. We're going to swear, by the way. It's a
we being Adam at this point.
Someone else help me out with that later. Yeah. But it's going to be, we are who we are, we're doing what we're doing, and we don't need to ask permission or apologies for what we're doing.
And what I said was, dude, you're totally wrong. The trouble is, yes, there is maybe one of those, and I like the underdog idea, but I think that we have to try harder and leave more people behind, basically.
It hurts me to hear that.
I know. And instead of this being the Kyle and Adam show, now we're going to throw it to someone else's big idea, because Sue Black is sitting right there.
Seriously.
And her big idea.
I didn't know they were doing this.
Well,
Right.
and we condensed these down into 3x5s because, truth be told, Adam and I are not that smart. But it was a long-range plan for the lakefront, and I thought, there was some interesting news relative to that. You cannot dispute what you accomplished in a either underdog, inferiority, or a trying harder and leaving some people behind kind of way.
Right.
So, go for it, lady.
Is there a question in there? Or
Tell us.
just
Yeah. Your long range. Well, how does your long range plan for the lakefront?
It was a we thing. It took everybody, and I think that's one of the things that I like to do, and I'm most proud of, is bringing people together. I think sometimes people are getting too polarized, as opposed to finding where the circles, where we come together. And I think if you can do that, no matter what the project is, we could get more done. And I think that's what I bring to the table with any of the projects that myself and whoever has come to the table and what we've done together, The long-range lakefront plan, so that you know, it was a plan that, actually it was Supervisor Pat Jurczyk that had called with Jerry Broderick and said, hey, Sue, do you want to, this was back in my other life, do you want to chair the long-range lakefront plan? And I was like,
This
sure.
is when you were a crossing guard, right?
Yeah. And I said, yeah, I was looking for something else to do. But actually, well, you wanted real. So when you drive 94 going east, you stop at the lakefront and you saw that chain link fence, right? Isn't that what we see? And that would always bother me. And I looked at that and I'm like, that's our front door. That's what we're showing the world. So when they asked me to chair the thing, it just came together. I said, who knew that thing that I've been complaining about for years that would lead the group? So long story short, we had a year and a half to do it. We got it done in 3 months because it was supposed to be done December of 12. So if we would have done it, anyways, we got it done. 13 people came to the table. and signed onto the plan. And long story short, this morning the governor had a press conference that there were 5 initiatives, and 4 of the initiatives are going to happen. So it is pretty exciting that it was the DNR, the DOT, the state, the county, the city, the business community. But yeah. And it really is going to change the face of Milwaukee. 2 other people that I want to, is Mike Cudahy. I mean, Mike has done so much for the community. Can we, yeah, you too, Barry. Well, come on, we can't do, stop it. But anyways, and Epstein, Ewan Architects with Greg Ewan, the 3 of us went around, and then I can't say enough, Rich Tennyson. That's what I mean, it just takes everybody, you know, and Rick Barrett, I know that he's in the audience, and, you know, Matt, what you've done and what have you. But that's the point, whether it's that plan or whatever. But that's huge for the city. I gave them a disc and it's online, so if you don't know what the plan is, I don't want to explain it now, but it's going to change everything. I'm really, really excited about it. So thanks for, anyways, all right, that's what I got.
One of the things is that it happened in record time, Sue.
I
mean, for Milwaukee, I mean, we're still waiting for a streetcar. Right. Saying, how long has that been?
Right.
So tell me, Sue, what was the difference here?
Well, honestly, I like to run a quick meeting. I think people don't go to meetings because you're there for 3 hours and then people lie about why they have to leave, and so people don't go in the first place. Well, it's kind of the truth.
So you're on to us.
Well, so I think that if you run a really good meeting, people will come. So it was every other Wednesday from 11. I told everybody they'd be done by 12. We got in and out. Everybody had their homework, and boom, boom. You want to stay and chit-chat, do that on your own time. But let's make it very accountable, and it just happened.
Well, then a reality check, though, as to why anybody would even talk about the Milwaukee malaise. You run a good meeting. That's leadership. How many other people run a good meeting? How many other people? I've seen you, and you don't run a good meeting.
You never get done with dinner with him.
Yeah. And so, you know, so we're talking about how do you get things done, and what's our vision, and if you have a vision, and there's no way to get from your vision to the reality, to the input, and to sit there and say, hey, we pulled it off. That's what the problem is with Milwaukee. We have to have more people who say, I'm going to have a quick meeting, I'm going to get something done, I'm going to take a stand, and it's got to be somebody. And the question is, who is that somebody or somebodies? I mean, Barry fights it, we all fight it, trying to get something done that we believe is right.
Well, Barry, can you, because this is a bit to your big idea, essentially.
To my big ideas, right?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
place, that was perfect, Mike.
That was perfect, Mike.
Barry's going to pay me later.
Yeah. Well, the idea was to build a private sector vehicle, a leadership vehicle, so that we don't have to wait for the someone to move forward. I think that waiting for a great leader is sort of like waiting for Godot, or maybe waiting for the Messiah. It just may not come in your lifetime.
I disagree. I think there are a wealth of great leaders that are in our city. It's a matter of empowering new leaders to do new things. So it's not too early to be contentious, is it?
No, go for it.
Oh,
great.
no, you can be
You're doing great, Evan. Keep these babies coming.
That's a Manhattan.
Because one of the things in terms of, I like the idea of the lakefront. I liked the idea of the Riverwalk. I liked the idea of having these different entertainment complexes. And a lot of the great ideas that have happened from the leaders that step up. And I get on one hand, it makes sense. You're going to take care of the things that you're interested in. But if it's the same folks with the same interests and they're improving things that people are already taking advantage of, like the lakefront and the Riverwalk and these different festival ideas, there are other leaders with other ideas, with other interests that are getting forgotten, that aren't being invited to the table, that aren't being asked to come on board.
And that is actually part of Barry's point, I think, which is great, is that it's not just the political leadership. It is the easiest thing in the world to do, to gripe about your politician. It's about your own action that you need to take. And what Barry's idea is about, you know, not just the same people that are around all the tables in Milwaukee, but to truly have all generations so that we can have different voices at the table and proposing to create sort of a new leadership group to take
So
this
the ones on the bar stools, too.
Absolutely.
And that's interesting in terms of how we're forward thinking at this circle here, but also how we've been shaped. So when I looked at the idea and this partial leadership of private leadership, I automatically assumed, oh, the bigwigs who had the memberships at the Wisconsin Club, those private industry people.
No, the Milwaukee Club.
He's right. That's, yeah.
But
I
thank
have
you for
no
that
idea what
clarification, because I automatically assumed, and I think a lot of people automatically
turtle
assume.
soup.
No, that's
awesome.
why I said private sector. In the private sector, to me, are all those people other than elected officials.
Not even elected officials, but private sector
Because-
CEOs.
Private sector CEOs, but private sector artists.
I'm a fan of that.
You're a fan of that? That's what I thought.
At this point, I was actually going to say, Evelyn, one of her ideas was about how we complain about political leadership and how we need to move beyond that or do something different. And I didn't even need to do that. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I don't even know if I said that, did I?
Go, just
Say whatever
go
you
ahead.
want.
And I
Okay.
wrote it down.
I did write it down a long time ago. But what I said is that complaining about leadership is a waste of time. And those people get elected because they are who we have to vote for. And we vote because somebody told us to vote. And we may not agree with whoever is, in office, but that's who we have. So for me, leadership begins, I would say, with ourselves. And I said one of our main ways to lead is by leading our own bodies by becoming healthy. And that's by eating raw green things, which a lot of people don't want to do.
Milwaukee has one of the biggest densities of young professional groups in the entire nation. And it's been happening in earnest here for like the last 15 to 20 years. And we always said at Young Professionals in Milwaukee, which kind of formed out of the MMAC about 15 years ago, was nobody gives you the right to stand on the sidelines. And that was our mantra. And Dasha and I used to work together at a public relations firm, and we were really blessed to have a boss that encouraged us to get out there. You get out there, you go do this, I'm gonna give you that. And I think if you're a leader in this community, you have to take that within you to say, you know what, I'm gonna take a 22-year-old to this meeting. I don't care if it's all 55-year-old guys at this meeting and women. I want you to be here, I want you to be at the table. So it's not only our responsibility to step up, this is a collective thing.
Did anybody tell you, yeah, it's okay?
A lot of people told me, no,
Right,
no, we don't
right,
want you here.
right.
What are you doing here? What do you know?
Yeah, I guess
mean,
that's what I wanted to bring. You have to be ready for that.
Right, you do. And so you have to also-
Constantly. More often than you're ready. I mean, you have to be ready to be exhausted of hearing it.
Without a doubt.
None of us ever
You gotta
were
have fun
ready
doing
for
it.
it. None of us was ready for it. We were in the right place at the right time, or you got kicked by the right person. So we have to, I agree, do more kicking. I mean, a lot of my ideas were about giving that space for these young people. If they're not engaged in the conversation, they won't have the practice of engaging themselves in a conversation. Right now, I mean, part of it being a young person, that's grown-up talk. Bring these young people, whether it's a high school student or a college student, put them in these meetings, and not just to take the young person to work day. I mean, really engage them in some of these conversations, and they don't know what they're capable of until we push them into the space of finding out what they're capable of. And this is a city of gatekeepers. When I first moved back to the city, I was amazed at how tightly people hang on to these positions and ideas. And I know it's human nature, I get it, and it's part of the culture, I get it. But there needs to be somebody or some force that's ripping that away out of people's fingertips. And I think bringing young people to the meeting is the way to do it. That's a great example of that.
Well, I think you guys are really saying the same thing. And this is something that I look at Sue, and we need more people taking initiative in the city. And I think what you guys are saying is people have to step up, be your own leader. And I think the idea that you're waiting for someone else to take that first step, take that first step, whether it's in your community, in your own business, as part of the parks director, whoever it is. I think the idea that you can bring people together like that is, to me, everyone needs champions. You also need believers. And I think that's what really raises and makes success out of projects, whatever it is, visions.
And as an old guy, don't be afraid to have an edge.
Correct.
Don't be afraid to be a little bit
More
angry.
than an edge, dude.
Don't. Well, if I wore those shoes, I'd have an edge. Part of leadership is being forceful and fighting for what you believe in and taking a stand and carrying through on it, and not to be afraid to be counted. And all too often, we see the pattern in Milwaukee, oh, I'm not going to take that on. Or, oh, the politicians are not. That's not the way anything's going to happen, and that's not the way anything's going to change. We have to have people who are willing to step up and be counted, to have an edge, to be tough, and to be heard.
So I am dying to get in over here.
Yeah, please. Sally, we're like
dying to get in over
teleconnecting here. And
We just heard an incredible story from Nigel, correct? That story has got to be part of this dialogue. What is going on in the lakefront is going to be extraordinary. The hotel and new retail and apartments and condos and new boulevards. But I would tell you, in parallel, our central city that I've spent so many years working in, trying to do just a little bit of trying to get on the side of the solution rather than the problem. Listen to this gentleman. Listen to what he has to say. And try to figure out, in parallel to this incredible story that we heard that was all of the news today, how do we do something as incredible and significant on North Avenue in the central city?
Sally,
Well,
I don't want to interrupt you, but I
people
think
who said you can't build a tower west of the river.
hey. You know, because you live in the central, I mean, you don't live there, but you work there.
Yes.
You know that there are several people working to build that area up. You know, like Welford Sanders.
Absolutely.
And Melissa Goins.
Absolutely.
And Walnut Way.
Absolutely.
With all they're doing. All those people are working really hard. So it means that things are moving along. And it's getting better.
And Evelyn, let me just say is that there are incredible pockets of extraordinary activity.
Right.
And I suspect that though many people in our community are not aware of them, because all that you've just mentioned in terms of Walnut Way, et cetera, is extraordinary people, extraordinary work. But all I'm saying is, how do we have this become part of the dialogue so that we can get excited about this and that at the same time? If I had the answer, I would spit it out right now, but I don't have it.
I don't understand what you're saying, because these people are part of the city, and they're all working throughout the system.
There wasn't a press conference for them and the work that they're doing.
But you have
They do have them sometimes. I mean, when something happens, like Melissa Goins, when she started, there was a press conference. There is a press conference for Walnut Way. It is
and this
there.
isn't that there's zero. I mean, please, Evelyn, that is not at all the years that I've been working there. But I am just suggesting is extraordinary
Well,
for our
that's saying
downtown.
that that's not extraordinary.
Oh,
Just because
Okay.
what they're doing is different doesn't mean that what we're doing is not extraordinary in that area to make it better.
okay.
So
okay.
it's the words you're choosing.
And I think
No, I'm
sometimes
hearing you.
with media, we can take a story like a Welford Sanders, Melissa Goins, Walnut Way, and say it's 1 in a million. And that in itself is almost an indictment to the 999,000, everything else, and saying this is the one thing that exists in that place. And I've just been so blessed to move across a lot of different boundaries and a lot of different communities, and just seeing that there is an immense beauty, there's an immense depth and texture to Milwaukee, whether you're looking for it or not. And that to me is kind of where I'm hearing this conversation going, is that there's both. There's immense beauty and texture and whatever downtown, but also around
But what
where
about
your
reality?
gallery is.
Reality unemployment, reality lack of jobs, reality foreclosures, reality lack of retail. I can go on and on. And anyway, it's, I would like to be
It's
part
hard.
of it.
She's actually very optimistic.
and that was the dark side of Sally.
I
That
don't want
was
to keep jumping in here, Sally.
And I
'cause
gotta
I love
I'm
you.
glad I took my Prozac this morning.
She is actually very optimistic.
I really think we have to celebrate all the victories, every victory. And there are victories happening every single day in Milwaukee. And every time I'm part of a conversation, we're talking about unemployment in the inner city. Not only talking about it, but trying to think about how to fix it, how to work in the educational system, how to help with respect to schools, with respect to development in the inner city as well. I think those discussions are happening. They may not be as publicized, but I think there's a tremendous amount of courage that goes on every day trying to attack these issues by people who you wouldn't necessarily suspect. So, for example, I saw Rebecca Clayfish and Dr. Thornton having lunch and hugging each other. Now, you wouldn't necessarily think that would be the case.
Just shift.
I know.
It's true.
But I will tell you that people on both sides of the aisle are helping one another to try to help fix these problems.
And from that hug, you think something positive will happen, and you're, as by nature, an optimistic guy.
Yes.
I'm by nature more of a realist, and I say, at the same time, we're being hopeful of the Walnut Ways and the Journey Houses and the Clark Squares of our city. We also have to be realistic of the massive problems we have and not be afraid to talk about them in realistic terms, real numbers, that foreclosures are serious when we got 8,000 or 10,000 homes. These are real problems. And when we have discussions, we have to look people in the eye and say they can't go on. We can't have a cruddy school system for another decade, another generation. We can't let that happen.
Couldn't agree with you more, Michael.
Well,
You can't have it happen, and that's why we have to work together. That's why we have to create this private sector vehicle to think in terms of economic development, education, the arts, all of it. We have to wrap it all together and work 24/7 on it.
I would like to say about what you just said is that
I ate my green and
Every time we come
Mike
here, I say,
juices
"What'd you
every
have
morning,
for
I know.
breakfast?" Yeah, I
no, he
always wonder
doesn't.
Mike is actually, he's a raw foods vegan. You can never tell by looking at him.
Funny.
But what I would like to say is that when we read the article, one of the things in the article it said was, if you look at the rocks, and I keep telling you that, it said if you look at the rocks, you crash into the rocks. Why can't we look at what we want to build rather than keep focusing on the rocks? We don't want the rocks. We know about the rocks. All of us talk about the rocks all the time. So why would people get together to listen to us say the same things that they're saying every day?
I'd only say, if that's the problem, move the rocks.
I think we all know the problems, though. And
go
this is
around
where,
them. That's right.
you know, I look at the people on the stage here, and it gives me hope because not only were we talking about it, but we're talking about people that are actually doing it. And that's the great thing about Milwaukee. We're a bunch of doers. So at some point, I'm glad this is only an hour because let's stop talking and actually doing something. I work with a lot of doers. I love my guys because that's what they do. They say, I don't want to talk. We all know the unemployment and the economic problems that the city has, but if we just talk about it, they're not going to solve themselves.
So Matt, let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it.
Let's talk about
solutions.
solutions.
Let's talk about the
Fine,
solution.
then I'd love to hear vision. I mean, what really turns us all on to be passionate?
Build.
It's building, it's vision.
You're talking about build, create jobs.
Can we go to Stephanie?
Yeah, she's been a bubbling pot. Her big idea is fantastic, plays right into this, but she told us at one of the dress rehearsals she doesn't know how to interrupt.
She's very
It's not my
polite.
strong point. So everyone in the audience will know that I'm excited about something when I really interrupt. But no, first, what's your cue on which idea are you referencing?
The trust fund for buildings.
Okay. When we were all asked to put together different ideas, for a while I've been saying that the example of a trust fund for existing buildings would be something where we could pull together all of our talents. Some of us here have a strong point in arts and culture. Some of us have the strong point in education, others in design. And we have an incredible building stock. Now, I'm not just talking about historic buildings where they're 50 years and older, they have a particular story to tell. We have thousands of existing buildings that are either vacant or underutilized. And what's unfortunate is that we do have the ideas there. We have a lot of passion, and we have people that feel those buildings have a lot of potential. We don't often have the funding tool to marry those ideas with high quality design and with dollars for implementation. So that's just one idea amidst all of our group's ideas that I feel could really marry several different concepts that we have in Milwaukee to improve our city. And what's interesting is when we all talked previously about what we thought was the best success in Milwaukee in the past 2 years, what started to surface in our conversation were all things that were visible in the built environment. So that's why that became my suggestion. So there were other suggestions as well that we should talk about.
Well, like Jonathan wants to legalize pot. I mean, he's a film guy, so there's a caveat.
It's a natural.
Yeah.
It's a natural.
Yeah.
But it's just, if you look at the incarceration rates, especially when you look at race in this country, it is staggering how, white citizens versus black citizens of the United States are treated when it comes to criminal and penalties for marijuana. It's just staggering.
So do you want
United States, 25% of the world's prison population is right here in the U.S.
And the majority is for
Nothing.
a parking
Petty
ticket,
offenses.
more or less. So do you want
It's
to do that
gonna
just...
happen, and I'll tell you that. It's gonna happen. We should step forward and be the city that does it first.
And if nothing
He
else,
just wants you to go to his film festival.
and even
It's
if you
all
jump past
hucksterism.
the moral divide, just the economics that we keep coming back to the dollars, everything's in by the currency of Facebook these days. I remember having a status going, think about it. When we get this right, the weed guy is going to have a customer service 800 number, right?
Let's stop giving money to the prisons and let's put it back
How
in the
about that?
community.
I mean, Denver's charging a 25% sales tax. So that's an income. So it's not just it would be kind of cool to have this legal, but there is an economic and there is a social aspect that's a benefit.
Picture Chris Abley and Sheriff Clark sharing a joint.
That might be where things would get better.
With or without a gun.
Heavily armed.
Thornton Clayfish, who knows?
Do they hug afterwards?
I'd like the over-under.
So Sue, you said something in one of our dress rehearsals where the change that you effected through the Parks Department, through your tenure there, this didn't happen overnight. You said it went neighborhood by neighborhood, meeting by meeting, resident by resident.
Right.
And I think that is crucial to hear because we got this great present today. We can all be excited about it. We should. I agree with you, Barry. We should.
But it's so much more than that. I love Wisconsin. I think everybody knows it. When I ran the state parks, it was the same thing. It was the entire state and looking at it and looking at all the different opportunities. And it's about having that vision and having the leadership and it's about results and getting it done. So I agree with you. And I didn't mean to make it just the lakefront because when I look at all of the successes over the last 20 years, there's just so many, check, check, check. But you just have to bring the people together. I see Dr. Michelle Brie is here from Journey House, and I know that yeah. But, we put the Packer field in over there. We've done thing on the south side. I don't know if you know that, but we got the used Packer field. Anyways, it's a great project. But the north side, everything that we've done over at Johnson's Park and all of those projects, there wasn't a property that I didn't look at and say, what's the potential of what we could do for that neighborhood, right down to the concerts, bringing people together. Not even just transforming places, it's about transforming those lives and who you're going to touch with it. And if you can do both of those things, I think that's key, and I think that's what I'm most proud of. But it was everybody coming together. I see Chris Cagle here from Wheel and Sprocket. Think of all the things that you supported that people probably don't even know what you've given back. He's amazing. So if there were more lights and more people, I'd give more accolades out there. But that's what it's about.
Everybody who knows Sue, stand up.
Yes. But it's about check, check, check. It's like you look at it, you get the vision, and then you figure out how we're gonna get there, and then you just take the
You
steps.
are to be commended. For instance, Johnson Park. it has become extraordinary.
I know, it's getting there.
And only because people cared, they paid attention to it, they had a vision.
Right.
And all those berms that were all over this place, that were all from infill from houses that were torn down. And you had no sight vision, and the children couldn't be seen as they were playing in the park.
Right.
And so you're to be commended. And that is the kind of leadership that I love. People that are looking throughout the entire city, not just one area, but trying to get, and again, I had made some notes in terms of trying to get all boats to rise sort of together. You know, I'm not suggesting this is easy. But that's sort of what my concept is. I mean, I love the Calatrava. I love what we're doing on the lakefront.
But it's everywhere. You got to do everything.
We need to try to move them all up.
Can I make a request? Because it's my show. Someone made a comment about going neighborhood by neighborhood, and I loved your idea about each neighborhood having its own mayor.
Oh, yeah.
So something where you're talking about, you have these different, talking about public sector and really communicating that it's not just the muckety-mucks and the fan of muckety-mucks, but that the regular person with a regular job, living in a regular house, has amazing ideas. Sherm, please tell us about your mayor
Thank
idea.
you, Josh. I mean, I think you find, block by block, we're all really invested in our neighborhoods and our streets, and we all have our own passions, and we all want to make stuff happen. I think you got to find one thing and own it. And if it came from the mayor to say, hey, we're going to appoint you the mayor of your block, you tell us what's wrong. You tell us what needs to be changed. Maybe we even designate some funding for each block so people can really take control of their blocks and make stuff happen. I mean, I'll look at just a little small example. We live on Wells Street, and once we moved there, it became my thing to make Wells Street a two-way street. And there's probably a lot of people up here that disagreed at the beginning, but it was all I talked about for 10 years. And I'm not saying I made it happen, but I just kind of
But damn you, Sherman.
persistent. You're persistent, and you become a pain in the ass, and it kind of works. And after 12 years, we got the street changed, and we got everyone together. And as Sue talks about all the time, it is about collaborate or die. And I think, really you got to collaborate and you got to connect on a block by block basis. And if that became a model in Milwaukee, hey, you're going to be the mayor of your block, I think we could really empower everyone to step up and make some great stuff happen. Because there's already so much good stuff happening, and that's just one little idea.
Can I ask though, that does sound like something called the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative, like exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like just what ideas people might have to make the healthy neighborhood more effective on a block level. I mean, because that what you just described is almost how it's structured in some ways, and providing funding and all that. And sometimes, where funding exists and where people feel they can find resources, they're speaking two different languages, and they both think they're speaking Esperanto. I guess just for Kyle. So let me just throw that back out.
Here for you, buddy.
With this whole theme being about, not the whole theme, but when we had our initial conversation about placemaking, there's a disconnect. You have so many people that are born and raised in this city, and this is what they know, to Nigel's poem, and this is what they do, this is where they've been, but they still don't feel like they own the city. They don't own their block. They don't own what's happening. And so the mechanics of what happens in Milwaukee just pass them by. So before you ask that question, I was gonna ask the panel, all of these great ideas and to get up and go make your ideas happen. The $1 million question is, it's not just the 12 of us who feel that way, so why doesn't it happen? Why aren't those folks who have those ideas, are they not informed? Are they not encouraged? Is there not an outlet for them to make those pet peeves become actual realities? How do we not make neighborhood
Isn't it a personal choice to own it, though?
It can be.
I think it completely is.
Yes, but I don't think if there's not a culture that encourages that. I'll give an example. I did a project years ago for a local manufacturing company, and I was fascinated that the person who twists the widgets can send an email to the CEO about what they don't like and what doesn't work. Most corporations, that's unheard of. You've got so many layers in hierarchy, and this needs to go through in committees, and I get it. Been in corporate structure, that's how it works.
Right.
Same way how our city is structured. You have people that have that, I own it, but no one's going to listen to me. Or I'm not as I assumed when you said private structure, I'm not the only person who assumes I'm excluded. So placemaking, physically, yes, I want beautiful structures because I go and I enjoy those different facilities. But if I don't feel like I own this city, I don't feel like my opinion is valued, I don't see people that look like me, that sound like me, that have ideas that I can buy into, are making those claims, I'm not encouraged to make the effort.
This is not an easy city.
I totally disagree.
It's not an easy city to move around in.
I agree.
It's not an easy city to move around in, and it's not an easy city to move around in because people need to push the people that are stopping the movement from happening. You know, and it gets back to the same thing that I harp on, because it's not easy to get things done. And in order to get things done, you've got to get the people who are stopping the progress from happening, you've got to get them to change their mindset. You've got to get them to understand what people are trying to do, which is to make things better for everybody, whether it's on your block or in your neighborhood or in your area of town. And that is not happening. We cannot move around as easy as other places can move around. And we've got to change that. And we shouldn't tolerate it for 1 minute. We just shouldn't tolerate it.
Let me just touch on this neighborhood personal choice thing, because when I moved to my neighborhood, Walker's Point, which I adore, 18 years ago, absolutely love it, I didn't look or sound like anybody. Everyone else spoke Spanish. Everyone else had lived there for longer, with the exception of the customers that were going to the new Mexican restaurants. I was the only guy that spoke English. Okay. And I didn't like things that were going on in my neighborhood. I wasn't going to stand for them, quite frankly, if I was going to continue to live there. And I wanted a loft, and you couldn't find one, so I picked it, and I was going to stick it out. And I had the temerity to change things that Jeff is talking about, to get wells turned around. And
are your kids going to view, though?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, and you make a totally. First of all, sorry, you make a totally
greater Milwaukee.
So you make a totally valid point, but to Sasha's point, it wasn't. I didn't need anyone to look or sound like me to affect change.
But listen, about Dasha's point, I was saying before that.
This is good.
I said before that when I hear people say he said he totally loved his neighborhood. And somebody, Sue, she said she loves Wisconsin or something.
Or something.
Something she loves. I don't love anything like a place. That I don't even understand the concept.
But you like green vegetables.
I do, but that's not Milwaukee. I do. I love.
This is kind of a point that Matt made about how you love the city, and perception renaissance is something that you brought up.
I didn't bring that up.
No, sorry, Matt. Matt did.
Okay.
The other non-white dude here.
Wait. I am half Chinese, which isn't a joke. My mom's right there. She's Chinese, and so Matt, perception renaissance.
Well, I've lived on both coasts, and this is one of the few states where the big city is, I think Milwaukeeans not necessarily love Milwaukee, but they really like Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. But you get outside of Milwaukee, and the rest of the state does not necessarily like Milwaukee. And so,
not necessarily as being a diplomat.
Well, I'm being very nice about that.
Yeah.
But, I think this is interesting because the great people that I had a great conversation in my office about this. And I think there's this sort of, and I'm going to throw this out there, elitist sort of attitude about people. And this event, as great as it is, I think if you look at someone from northern Milwaukee, they're going to look at this and say, oh, that's kind of an elitist sort of, event that's going on. I can't attend that. So that's why I say, it really is up to the individuals to be persistent and to affect change in their own way. And however that is, we can't wait for other people to do that. And that's what's, I think, so great about this city. A lot of cities, people are sitting there waiting for people to act. It does happen in other cities. Unfortunately, Milwaukee's not one of those places. And I think if we can sort of do that on our own, it's going to show people that we can do this.
I agree, and I respectfully and almost disrespectfully say not. Only because here's the case, and this is not my concept. I had the benefit of going to a presentation. Dr. Shakti Butler was at UWM a few months ago and had this amazing film documentary she presented. And there's a woman that was speaking, and she's an African-American woman, and she said, you know, we can have these conversations about privilege, and we always want to attach privilege to the white person who lives in the suburbs and what they don't know, that's how they have it so good. She says, and here I am thinking that, and I can put myself in this category related to this. Here I am, a woman of color, and it never occurs to me that it wasn't because I'm so spectacular, and I am spectacular, that I got these opportunities. The fact that I'm educated, the fact that I have a middle-class background, the fact that I read outside of my genre and I understand things that are worldly, I have opportunities that aren't presented to a lot of people. So that being said, you have people that have the moxie and have the ideas, but have not been given the opportunity to be exposed to these kinds of conversations. So yes, it is up to the individual to want something, but we have to create avenues for those individuals to realize that they can speak out and that they can make things happen. So it has to happen simultaneously.
And
So how would you do that, Dasha?
So few of the ideas that we came up with the group actually addressed any of that. And I mean, our number one issue as a community, I believe, is the segregation of our city. And the idea, you know, of at least bringing the arts into the inner city or central city received like no votes on the website this past week. Other ideas, investing in the infrastructure of our city. You know, we have a flight into suburban communities that is still happening that's outside of our tax base.
And that's people who love Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, and corporations that are not downtown, and not part of the tax base in this city, but are using the services. They wouldn't live near Milwaukee if it weren't for this city, and yet we're not investing in it. There's a great model that happened in Oklahoma City of the 1-cent sales tax that give a lot of credit to Greg Marcus and his push and the Business Journal's coverage of this, and you know, nobody's talking about it anymore. And it's a great idea. It's revitalize that downtown, and I think it could do the same for us.
I love it.
I have an idea for integration, or I guess such an old word. But I want to say one thing is that a lot of people don't want to be integrated on your side or our side, you know.
Ooh. What's my side?
White folks.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
I'm just saying a lot of people don't want to have to do that. So
I don't like to be stereotyped as a white guy.
Are you not white? What are you?
I am white, but I live in an integrated community.
And he likes to smoke pot.
Well, maybe that'll help.
Michael.
But what I wanted to say...
Only with Sheriff Clark.
What I wanted to say is I think that maybe like institutions that went away. We used to have the Milwaukee Inner City Arts Council, and we had the Black Holocaust Museum, and a lot of times in our neighborhoods, because the money isn't there to support it, those institutions go when the people who started them die or get sick or are no longer able to keep it going. So what I thought of is, in my mind, is that I don't know what Sue Black is doing down on the lake. I saw it in the paper, but I don't know what's happening. But I think if we would put all of the museums together on the lake or in the mall, like the museums, it wouldn't be just black and white all the time. It would be like Summerfest. There are many types of ethnic groups here, and we could all create museums that would reflect.
That was Matt's idea.
Was it?
It was his big idea.
Oh, I do.
Arts and museums.
Were you guys whispering?
No. But I'm saying that would help people integrate on not a superficial level. You could all just go and experience things as you wanted to openly if all of them were together, like at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C.
And they're
And there
Good
are
idea.
channels of funding that exist within the city, and those oftentimes, for creativity, for example, and full disclosure, I'm a part of that a lot of times, those funding sources will oftentimes fund marketing efforts towards saying we are a creative city, and we win Art Place designation as one of the country's art places. But oftentimes it's putting our money where our mouthpiece is, as opposed to finding ways to creatively fund creative work that's going on. And I think that can be, and again, I'm involved in that conversation on a really strong level, but there is money, is what I'm trying to say, and there is investment, but it can be on this marketing level of Milwaukee's a great place to live, and that's, I don't know what that does, I guess.
Me either. What block are you on? You know?
Well, there was something that, and I can't effectively speak to the quote-unquote inner city, but I did learn through some of the projects that Sally was talking about that I interfaced with through the show, the Fondy Markets and the Walnut Way and things like that. And it was primarily through young Kim, and if he's out here, he should get a round of applause too. But when we worked with them and filmed, I found out, these weren't institutions full of people and communities that needed to be saved, which was why a lot of it wasn't how we came in. We never come in with that perception or to document that. But most of the energy around my discussion of being there and filming was, oh, good for you. They need all that help. Isn't it great what they're doing? It's bullshit. And I came to realize how much that was. But I do think that is a paradigm that probably many of us in this room, too many that we'd like to admit, live with when we talk about the inner city.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get back to the comment that we're one of the most segregated cities in the world, and actually in the United States, and I think that is true. It is one, but it's not only black and white. It's everything.
It's cultural, psychological, socioeconomic.
It's everything.
It's beyond geographical, absolutely.
It is. And I guess what disturbs me about this conversation is people keep on referring to somebody as a white guy or a black guy or a Chinese guy. Who cares? All I want to know is what you can contribute. And I think that if you can contribute and you move forward and do that and are persistent, you can make a difference. Everybody can make a difference.
It's often those little things that truly make a difference. It's like, who are you having over for dinner on Saturday night? Where are you going for dinner on Friday night? Make a list of the 10 places that you and your friends, if you live in Brookfield, you may never go to, but make that list and be concerted about it that you're going to go to different places. I mean, there's all little things within us that we can help kind of change this perception. We all have it within us.
Steph? Oh, I was going to say, to that point, I wanted to tie some of our conversation back to the Milwaukee Malaise article, but I wanted to ask how many in the audience, show of hands so we can see past the blinding lights, read the Milwaukee Malaise article in the Journal Sentinel?
Some house lights.
Yeah, I know, house lights.
Do we have house lights?
Hey, do
Bob?
I have
Anybody?
the control to bring up house lights?
Stephanie demands
Bring
house
up
lights.
But I have my very high-tech printed paper of the article, and I just wanted to read a quote and then tie it back to some of our conversation. That after talking in the, house lights, show of hands, who read the article? Yeah, okay. So for those of you that haven't read this, the discussion around, you can turn the house lights down. Thank you. Making me nervous. But the discussion centers on some of the history in Milwaukee of the privileged white male class that would congratulate themselves over the last 30 years on their successes, and that they're the group that doesn't, and I'm going to quote this, they do not feel the pain that compels people to do things differently. And I thought about that and how that relates to our conversation tonight. And we have examples of more than just pain that drives people to do things differently. We have passion, and we have the belief in our potential. So I'm stepping back a little bit from conversation Barry just mentioned about specifically segregation in the city and some of the other dialogue. But we need to continue to talk about the potential that we believe in and the passion that we all have. But then somehow our panel needs to figure out how we all get enough free time to implement all of those things that we want to do. Because until we can make all of these ideas not seem like more work for certain people in the community or for certain groups. We have to try and incentivize and make it more fun for us to implement these ideas. And I think we have more to talk about on that.
Well, it may not necessarily be fun, but it may be satisfaction of accomplishment.
Bravo.
You know, that sometimes I sat in an MPS strategy session, which was a misnomer to start with. And they had their
That's too easy, Mike.
Yeah, that was
too easy.
low-hanging fruit, buddy.
Their vision was to be, and this was their old vision, that's why we were meeting, to come up with a new strategy. Their vision was to be the finest school system in the country. A noble vision. But give me better reading in 4th grade, give me better math in 6th grade, give me better high schools, give me more people like my wife, Mary Ellen, who's dedicated to the teaching profession and who are willing to teach kids, black, white, green, yellow, whatever, and reach their full potential, then you've got something. And too often, we're doing this when we need to do this, step by step, and not fall back and not surrender, but just keep moving forward and enjoy the satisfaction that comes from a successful project. One at a time. Get started. Do something. Move forward. You know, we can get a lot done. There are a lot of people. If just everybody in here walked out and did one thing and did it to make a difference, we'd be way ahead of the game. Way ahead of the game. And then if we can inspire 10 other people, not that hard. Not that hard. We sit around talking about everything. They did a Project 2000 in Milwaukee. Big thing. Took months and months and months. Hundreds and hundreds of people. You know where it is? It's on a shelf someplace collecting dust because nobody did one thing about it. Can't do that.
It's a cool T-shirt, though. In all seriousness, you guys are...
And it had a pretty cover.
And I know we're going to get to... But you guys are owed a Q&A, and we had a time limit that we told you for this, and we're coming up on it. So we also want to respect your evenings and your expectations. I'm told via napkin that you've been tweeting and texting, and there are some good comments out there. So why don't you add yours? I think you had something to say, Jeff?
Well, I was just going to Mike's point, I believe that there are truly a lot of that stuff happening in town. And I think, you know, a city is only as good as the stories it tells. And we all have great stories to tell. And Mike, your company has done amazing things in this community. And you should be commenting for that. So.
Is everyone comfortable? Should we keep going at each other in a positive way or Q&As?
I like this question.
Q&As? Good, good.
So the first question, for many, Milwaukee is a hard place to live. Why is it that if a voice addresses its imperfections, people shun that voice? I love that point / question. I think oftentimes we deserve to be criticized. It's a privilege to be criticized. Mm-hmm. We should be lucky that people aren't just Cookie Monster chewing up our cookies and letting them fall down, and they digest them and swallow them and think about the cookies we bake. Again, didn't work. Okay, so
I had you, but I just couldn't support you on that.
So the question, anybody on stage want to take that?
It's kind of comparing it when someone tells you that your child is acting an ass at school. You don't want to hear that.
Are your kids here?
No, they're not, because they're at home being angels. So this is what they always do. But it's this place where you are, and especially someone made a comment about if Milwaukee's a place where they feel that they are resigned to stay. No one wants to accept that. I mean, it's already hard enough that you resign to stay here. So it kind of goes to places where you don't know, and you don't know the answer. How do you answer? How do you respond to that? But I like that question because you're right. Because we were talking at the very beginning. Oh no, there's nothing wrong with the city. Oh yeah, there's plenty of things wrong with the city. A lot of things that are wonderful about the city as well. But let's talk about both of them. And the things that are hard are the things that we can't fix. It is segregation. It is racism. It is unemployment. It's all those barbed conversations that you just can't address with a study that's going to collect dust on a shelf.
Josh, I was just going to say though, is I know that for myself and for lots of other people that are in my generation, that we are very, very anxious to have our adult kids staying in Milwaukee, not running off to San Francisco, not running off to Portland, not running off to Chicago, et cetera, but are living in Milwaukee and building this really adorable city that got hammered during the recession. And we're on our way back, but we need to just go, you know, we're just going step by step. We got hammered, but in some areas worse than others. And I think everyone on this panel recognizes that. And all I can tell you, whether it's our adult kids, we want them to stay here because they think it's a very cool city. We want our little ones, the grandchildren, to stay here and continue to build a very interesting city on this beautiful lake that we have with lots and lots of resources. And so this has been an amazing experience for me because really up here are some remarkable younger people. I hate to say that.
Can I say, as an adult child, and my mom's sitting right there, again, I'm serious. You called the city adorable. I was going to cut you off and say, don't call us adorable.
Okay.
My love for the city, or sorry, oh, so self-aggrandizing, sorry.
Totally.
I was going to say,
If you love it.
just the love is a very complex thing. And it's not about, I love this place and I love what it does for me, because that's oftentimes a product of privilege. Love is a very complete picture. And there's ickiness in love, and there's work in love. And that's what I feel as an adult child of Janet Carr and Richard Carr, my father, who I'm very proud to be a son of, and investing in the city as a child of the city. And it is about that embracing of this place for all that it is, and not just the beautiful downtown.
Well, you
And
have
not just the
said
lakefront.
this, no, but you have said it perfectly.
And if we all need one thing to do, I would encourage all of the less than young veterans, make a phone call to have someone that you know introduce you to someone under 40 that you don't know. And like Jeff said, bring them to a meeting, invite them to a panel, send them articles, and that you have to become their big brother, big sister mentorship program, but make an effort to get them invited in the conversation.
Can I take a stab at the question above?
Let me read the one above for you, Mike.
I know most of those words.
Wait, so everyone, can everyone read it though? Can everyone read it? Is he T-bowing? But read it for the crowd, I think, right?
That's, maybe you should do that.
Okay. Every few years, a national article expresses surprise at how cultured Milwaukee is. Why always surprised? How do we change this? Also, for many, Milwaukee is a hard place to live. Why is it that if a voice of...
We already did that.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see that.
Should I read them?
Can I go at this now?
Jeez.
Yeah, be careful. The chair might
The
go.
first question is,
I'm gonna fall down.
the first question is, we suffer from the Laverne and Shirley syndrome, cheeseheads, beer, what everybody says on radio and television, the Fonz somebody said, all of that. Happy days, and I regret to tell you that that's my cousin, Tommy Miller, who did those shows, and he grew up in Milwaukee, really nice guy. But the only way you get around that, and we shouldn't be surprised, the only way we get around that is by responding. When somebody says something to you about that, tell them, hey, how about Summerfest? How about the Calatrava? How about the wonderful mix of people that live in our city? How about the wonderful things that are going on all the time, the neighborhood festivals, how we go about trying to do things. We don't always succeed, but we try. You can never let somebody put Milwaukee down without getting in their face. And that's the only way you're going to change it. And I've said this, when you see the mayor, when you see the county exec, I keep telling them, pick a fight. Pick a fight with Chicago. Pick a fight with Mayor Daley. Tell them you think you got great steakhouses, ours are better. Tell them you think you got great Chicago hot dogs, ours are better. Tell them you think you got great restaurants, ours are better. Pick a fight.
There's another practical response to that, as opposed to fisticuffs, though Mike is right. The national media, and I've had some intercessions with them on this, have all decided who we are. I've bumped into it 40 dozen times. The talent that we export, and I can just speak to the culinary talent, when they go out to the coast to cook, no one looks at their shoes when they say they're from Milwaukee. In fact, they get hired more readily because they know that they'll show up, work their asses off, be accountable, and be fantastic on the whole. However, in the national media, when that falsity is put out, and I mean this sincerely, write an email, send a letter, and say, I was personally offended because you've been looking through a little keyhole and decided a long time ago what we were all about, and you've been wrong all those years.
All right.
Can I say something about what Mike had to say?
Go for it.
Mike, this is one time I'm going to disagree with you. I was a conscientious objector to war. And
Which one?
Vietnam. Vietnam. It wasn't World War II like yourself.
Oh, snap.
I love you, Mike. But instead of picking a fight with Rob Emanuel,
Right.
what I would do is I'd call him.
I already did that.
Yeah, I'd call him here and I'd say, you know what, I have a really great idea. And then I'd get Mayor Soglin in here too, and I'd say I have a really great idea. What I like to do is form a triangle. And that triangle would be Milwaukee, Chicago, and Madison. And take all your universities, take all your industry, take your best institutions and your best mind, and create the biggest and best R&D triangle in the United States.
There's a lot of people in
I love that idea.
I want to ask you, how do people like that don't feel like they're part of that? How do they fit in?
High-speed trains.
High-speed train.
Yeah, that would be great.
I think, should we form a mob and go to the city hall next door?
I know a lot
Right
of
now,
you
I
don't
think
like me,
Gary
but-
Grunow put it right when he said that was a generational mistake.
Yes.
The bypassing of the train
Yeah.
funds.
Right. I just wanted to know, how do you
Not
get
many
people
walkie shop
who
people.
who don't feel included in the triangle? Like, I couldn't get the mayors or whoever all to come together and do anything.
Well, I'm not sure I could either.
Well, hold it. Rahm Emanuel was up here with Tom Barrett on the stage, talked about working together.
With
Paul Soglin's willing to do almost anything.
There's
So if
three
I wanna
Democrats.
do
I'm
that,
sure they can get
I'm
together.
saying, how
they'll
could
be
I
able to
get all
tonight.
that together?
You'd call him.
Okay, I'm going to call you.
Yeah.
No, don't call me.
And I'm going to call you and Barry.
We want to get as many of your questions in, so what is the biggest missed opportunity in the past 2 years? Okay, so next question.
Next question.
Yeah.
Next question. Okay,
Oh, here we go.
why do you call Milwaukee home?
Why not?
That question has been booed down. No, thank you.
No, come on.
Get a
No,
T-shirt.
Come on. Why do?
What do you think is a city to model? Why? That's a good question.
Portland.
What?
Because we have events like this.
I
Ourselves?
don't think you follow. I think that you lead. You know, I don't think I want to be any other city. I mean it. When you look at what we have here with being on Lake Michigan and the rivers and all of the other assets we don't have to list. You know, when I moved away to Arizona, you think that it's, you know, it's just warm and it's the same city. It's not. It's not the same people. I don't want to compare. Anyways, the point is that we should just lead and people should want to be us.
And also, we have to be comfortable. We have to be comfortable with the very nature of cities is that they are incomplete and they are dynamic. And we are incomplete and dynamic and creative and awesome. And we have to say that, and we have to shout it from the rooftops
We really are.
consistently.
And another thing too is this inversion that is going on across the country, and it's happening here in Milwaukee, that more and more individuals and families are moving back into the city and back into cities. So we are on the cusp of some remarkable things, I believe, that are going to be happening in Milwaukee. More and more people are going to be moving out of the suburbs, back into Milwaukee, and the one thing that concerns me, I don't want it to get so gentrified that we can't all afford to live in this remarkable city. I said adorable, you didn't like the word adorable, so I'll call it a remarkable city. But I really, really believe that the excitement of the city is continuing to come. And again, I really believe that recession stopped us for a moment, but we are coming back. And between Walker's Point and Bayview and Brewers Hill, I mean, we've got some remarkable, remarkable communities, Walnut Way, et cetera, et cetera.
Let's not forget that we have more arts groups and sports teams and universities and restaurants and clean streets then we should, for our population size, for our per capita, it doesn't make sense when people that suss these numbers out add it up. That's actually how awesome we are, theaters like this, on a daily basis.
But we shouldn't tell everybody all about that, because then they'll change it.
We're going to hug it out later.
So we didn't quite.
Kyle, I don't know if you know, but we were voted one of the top 12 art places in the country.
I didn't.
Yes.
But I would believe that in an instant. Yeah.
Oh, there's one nobody should touch.
What's causing it to emerge?
What do you see as the #1 emerging Milwaukee neighborhood, and what's causing it to emerge?
I want to jump in and answer, this won't fully answer whose ever question this is, because I'm not going to name a #1 neighborhood, but all of the neighborhoods that we've discussed tonight in some form or fashion have been paired with a lot of social resources and financial resources. So I think when we look at what neighborhoods are emerging and why, look at the tools and techniques and social capacity and human capital behind those neighborhoods, and you'll see why they're emerging. So I know that doesn't answer #1, but that's because I like every neighborhood in this city for different reasons.
That was kind of a sort of a boo.
Oh, Mike.
Does anyone want to answer?
Well, then what do you pick? Yeah.
Mike?
I work in too many neighborhoods. I've lived in too many neighborhoods, you know. I think that many of the neighborhoods in the city are so unique that if you live there, you would have every right to say, this is #1. And what we haven't done is, same thing I said before, got to blow your horn. Got to blow your horn.
You know, on the level of neighborhood development, I think that Orchard Field, Amani, Metcalf, Washington Park, right now that corridor, is starting to see some really strong resonance, some really strong investment from outside funders and internal investors. Maybe this wasn't what that question was about, but there's a lot of energy right now, and I'm blown away by the personal investment made by a lot of the neighborhood groups that are coming up there and pulling together.
I think one thing we can't lose sight of is that neighborhoods thrive on strong economic and civic hearts. And our economic and civic heart is downtown Milwaukee. And downtown has really become a neighborhood in the last 10, 15 years because of the downtown master plan and a lot of people around here and out there. So we can't lose sight of downtown Milwaukee and its importance to not only all of our neighborhoods, but the state of Wisconsin.
Absolutely. I think Bayview has done an extraordinary job, and I think so because, one, it hasn't received a lot of help along the way. It's really grown organically, and it's been in place for a lot of young people who couldn't afford downtown, to live downtown, have decided to live. And I think of all the restaurants and all the entertainment venues that are in the Bayview area, I think it's just fabulous. Great.
Barry, I think this will be a good one for you to answer this next question that comes up. What does Milwaukee have? Does Milwaukee have a problem with a lack of leadership from a corporate or civic perspective?
Yes.
Who answered that? Oh. Well, go ahead, Mike. You can start.
No, I said yes.
Mike, is the solution to do what Barry said? To create a new leadership group? Is that the solution?
I'll let Barry defend that position. I think it's a good one.
Well, thank you. We agree.
We're all coming together.
It's just great.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Cupcake.
Actually, I'm not sure that we need a new one. I think we have a lot of them that already exist. The question is whether or not we need to expand an existing one, whether it needs to be real or virtual. In other words, we could take the existing leadership groups that currently are in place and take from them an executive committee. So I think all the pieces are in place. I think a lot of the research has been done. We know how many plans are sitting on the shelf. I think now's the time to bring it all together, to take a look at our city over the next 10 years and say, these are the 10 things that we need to do, and let's get them done.
And Barry, I couldn't agree with you more, is that I really believe that those 10 things are all #1. They're not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, but they're all #1. And I really believe also that if in fact that our leadership, the way it exists now, and you could define it in any way you wanted to, felt as passionate as this audience and as this group here, there would be, I believe, some newer things that were going on, some added passion or some added planning. I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed in terms of what some of our current leadership is doing. We've got a lot of groups out there, but I would love to figure out how we could enhance it.
I think it goes back to what Mike says. I think that you have to take one issue, not one issue at a time, a number of issues at a time, but delegate them, have them worked on by the various groups that currently exist. And I'm not just talking about white leadership, I'm talking about all leadership. Just checking, I know. And get something done, because success breeds success.
Absolutely.
Momentum breeds more momentum.
Absolutely.
And the more success we have, the better image we're going to have, and the better Milwaukee will be.
You know,
Another opportunity to bring back
I sort of
some common
disagree with you
voices.
guys. I think we have great leaders, and I think leaders also need other people to act in their community. And this is something that I think if there is a Milwaukee malaise, it's the malaise of someone else will do that. Someone else will stand up and say something. And this is sort of my whole point. I agree with everything that you guys say. I agree with all the problems that we have. But what I'm saying is more individuals need to stand up and say, this is what I'm going to do, and be persistent, and do those little things, no matter how big or small.
I think what you're saying is everybody needs to be a leader.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we are.
We can talk about how good our leaders are.
It's sort of like
or
being
not,
in a
but
synagogue. Everybody's a rabbi.
We're all vice presidents.
I did. There was one of the things we were talking about online. There's this, I may have the website wrong. I think it's Incentivate. But it's the concept, you have these huge scientific companies, and they put out these brainy problems, all the classes I dropped in high school, but people need to solve them. So instead of relying on their R&D departments, they put them on this website so you can get paid to solve a problem for Kraft, solve a problem for Google, solve a problem for, Pfizer, and you have amazing people that were able to figure it out, and they get paid for it. So in that same concept, we have these issues and problems and challenges, and it's not just the leadership who's been elected, who's been hired, who's been put in place, and I keep coming back to this. Yes, we need to have, people need to stand up on their own too, but we have to give them avenues to be heard. So there are people that sit and they grumble in their apartments and they grumble over beers with their friends. There needs to be avenues put in place for them to submit their ideas, to come up with solutions. So if we want to take these top 10 things you're talking about, don't rely on the leadership that we have, not because I'm complaining because they're not good. They've got stuff to do, like, I don't know, run the city. So how about some of these citizens who also have amazing ideas, and it's almost, you have this advisory council, and they come together and they come up with solutions, they come up with ideas, and we figure out ways to make them happen, and not just say, oh, that was nice. We do a lot of lip service. We do a lot of things for press conferences. We do a lot of things that feel good. Let's go from the feel good to getting it done, and engage the people in our community that have the same intellectual capacity to come up with great ideas.
So that said, the mayor's office is putting together what they call a turnovation around Milwaukee County transit system, which we'd probably all put in our top 10 list of priorities, where they're asking people to pitch ideas to increase ridership. So that's happening, and that's not theoretical. They're doing that. Okay. So that is happening a little bit, but I completely agree with you. So,
I think I think the idea of getting those avenues and opportunities to be able to be heard is, I couldn't agree with you more. I think.
Isn't that what Jeff's website's for?
Exactly, and I think. I think the less we criticize, the more people will stand up and feel like they can say those things.
But we need to be able to criticize.
Exactly, we want.
We really do.
Yeah, we want
really
people to stand up and
realistic feedback.
Well, you criticize, yes, but criticize ideas, on their merits. But I think we do a lot of criticizing just because we want to criticize somebody.
And criticize with a solution.
Correct.
How can Milwaukee attract the world's greatest innovators? As a sub-question, how can Milwaukee retain the world's greatest innovators who leave?
Make it a cool city.
It's, yeah.
Bit by bit.
Well, I think they're doing it right now by taking this is going to be controversial, by taking the engineering school and putting it in Wauwatosa. And I think on the apron, wait a second, on the apron of the Regional Medical Center, where you have already $2 billion of investment. Now, the medical center, as well as the university, is going to be able to attract, because of the synergy between the two of them, the greatest minds to be able to locate in Metro Milwaukee, not the city of Milwaukee, in Metro Milwaukee, which is just as important as the city of Milwaukee, and be able to work with private industry to devise medical instruments that are going to be tested in an accelerator building on Innovation Campus.
Well, not just medical instruments. ABB is going to move there.
That's right.
With electrical stuff, and we're talking about fresh water. So the Freshwater Institute is bringing innovators from all over the world here.
That's another example.
So that's starting. You know, if we can get somebody to be a little more sensitive.
This was my big idea, which was light rail, and it's not really mine. Paul Purcell, the CEO of Baird, a number of years ago said, essentially, we'll leave in 20 years because we have trouble attracting the best and the brightest to work for Baird so that we can stay at the top of the investment banking game. It's not that I don't like Milwaukee. It's not that I want to move. It's a pain in the ass. And he was advocating for light rail because he said, I'd love to have people, if they want to continue to live in Milwaukee, that's fine, but maybe they want to live in Chicago and commute up. But the turnover, the kneading of the dough of all of that, there'll be so many positives. And his line, not mine, we need Chicago more than they need us.
So Kyle, here is a very concrete issue, light rail.
30th Street Industrial Corridor.
Why is it taking so long in this city to get this through?
My opinion was that it got way too political, and my suggestion was it should just be between, I didn't say Madison, but private and some bonds, and let's build it without asking the feds or anybody else for permission. Make it really fast, really simple, really easy, and connect all three or just two.
I mean, here is just a concrete idea that we've been talking about for, I think, a number of years. And I think there's common agreement that it would be very useful for the greater Milwaukee area.
The one thing we're very close to is the starter system of the streetcar in downtown Milwaukee.
Yes.
That will help expand out to the other communities. So I'd say if you want to support rail, get behind the streetcar because the train has already left and that is moving forward. Let's all support something that's already kind of moving forward.
I mean, the trains that Talgo had built that I saw that were extraordinary, that are mothballed somewhere. I don't get it.
I don't either.
So I'm going to take the streetcar.
Yeah.
That's right.
So next question. You can always learn from others, even if they're different. So what can you learn from other cities to address the issues tonight? Good question.
Portland on transportation.
Wait.
Oh,
he had his hand up first there, big guy.
No,
My friend the architect.
Minneapolis on corporate decisions. Look at Target. Put their headquarters downtown. If you've been to Minneapolis recently, they don't have a Great Lake. They have a much worse climate than we do. And look what that did for that city. That's pretty amazing.
New Orleans, for their arts education, they have similar to a magnet structure. So everything that's not happening within the schools, you have an after-school component where they're not just, and we have youth centers here, and we need to keep youth centers here, and it's, at this point, it's a common denominator programming. It's a place for parents to leave their kids, I mean in a good way, I've left my kids places too, but it's a place for parents to put their kids, but it's not top-notch instruction. It's safe spaces.
Well,
so
I work in the after-school program, so it is top-notch.
No, we are top-notch, but in terms of the way we have to prepare our programming, you have the common denominator of the kid that really wants to learn what we're bringing and the kid who's waiting until 4:30. So what New Orleans has, they have NOCA, and these are students that come and they're getting amazing instruction in all of the arts. These, Brandon Marcellus went there, Terrence Howard went there. So you have all these arts, people that are excelling in the arts world, but they also get credits for high school. So they're not only having a safe space to be, but they're excelling in an after-school environment. So finding superior time for our young people, all young people, not just ones who can afford to go to an elite camp or can pay to go to an enrichment program, that we invest in the young people outside of the school hours.
In answer to the question, Portland on transportation, Oklahoma City on how they did the tax thing, Chicago and how you kick ass politics and just get things done, you know, Washington on how not to do it. I am not running for anything.
What were you going to say, Jeff?
Jonathan mentioned and Mike mentioned Oklahoma City for their downtown blueprint and building a new arena for their sports franchise. That has to be first and foremost. We're talking economic heart stuff. You know, nothing brings a community together like winning. And we found that 20 years ago with the Brewers, and we're going to have that conversation. People are going to say no, but this is what this is all about, dinner conversation and creating community. Winning helps.
Too?
And building a downtown arena for our arts groups, our sports franchises, to get concerts through here keeps us a world-class city. So Oklahoma City did it right, Mike. I totally agree.
Sherman also knows that I don't think that we should be necessarily kissing off $300 or $400 million on a downtown arena when we have problems in our health system, our education system, and other things that need to do.
And that's why I love Mike.
That's a tough call. That's a tough call, and it should be debated and discussed. It shouldn't just be, oh wow, we've got to have a stadium to be a world-class area.
And Mike, this is what I'm saying is that if the wonderful stadium is going to get built for lots and lots of money, I sure would like to be able to see another great initiative in another area of the city that is down a bit on their luck, but doing the very, very best they can and do something extraordinary in another area of the city. So it's not just always one area of the city.
The conversation is about the arts, entertainment, and sports culture in this community. And frankly, in this state. It's not just about this team.
And it shouldn't be about the city. It's really a regional attraction.
Exactly.
The region should be able to support it. I agree with the mayor.
Well,
on
let's
this.
make sure Peter
I
pays
agree
Paul
with you
this
too.
time.
Yes.
Our great and
our state.
powerful Oz has told us that we can take one more question, and then, as they say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Perfect one.
And so, go ahead, buddy.
In one sentence, what does Milwaukee look like in 5 years? Exactly one sentence. Exactly one sentence.
That's up to everybody sitting out there.
Boo that guy.
Wow, he's sitting right next to your mom, too.
Punch him. Racine.
Does anyone want to grab that?
I want to say.
It's going to look like what we want it to look like.
Right.
I mean, I think the takeaway from tonight is, you know, it's really up to us. It's really up to all of us.
Inch by inch.
I'll make it a run-out.
I want to say that I would like Milwaukee to be the healthiest child center in the world.
That's one of the things I'm going to work on now with my new thing. It's really going to be about the kids and childhood obesity and work on it just with that whole thing. I want to be all over that.
And which means we'll have to retrain all the adults to be real leaders and not people who lead children into obesity and cancer and diabetes by changing what they feed children every day.
I do have to say, we were supposed to be charged with doing some grand wrap-up of what came up tonight, but it really does seem, you said it, it's that we have to do it very much ourselves.
Right.
If you have any hesitation, don't have it.
Right.
And if you're not doing it, you know what? You're hurting your city. So if you got an idea, if you got something you want to champion, and you're not doing it, shame on all of us.
Yeah, well put.
Well, and for me, it's working together. So if we have issues that were up here and they were polarizing, don't polarize. Just keep talking and find that common ground.
And I think it's, you know, tonight, historic Milwaukee bringing this event together, I've met several people on the stage that I didn't know before. I have somebody encouraging me to stay in our community in Brewers Hill and raise our child there. But I just, new relationships form from events like this. So congratulations to Historic Milwaukee for putting this together.
And thank you. We're all really fabulous and better behaved than we expected.
That's your fault. It's not ours.
Because you were worse behaved.
I just want to quickly remind everybody to hand in your ideas by the cherub in the lobby. Remember, we're going to put every idea online. It would be great to have 600 ideas that we could exhibit and send to our city leaders as a product of tonight. And I would also like to invite everyone to join us at Clear in the Intercontinental. We're going to get together and continue the conversation. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you so much to everybody who participated tonight. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Great job. That's great activity. Yeah.
It's